The position of Planned Parenthood is and has long been abortion anytime, any place, for any reason, for free. That used to represent the most extreme position anywhere in the Democratic Party, shared by only a very small, hard fringe portion of their elected leaders. But today, the radical things that the nation's largest abortion business wants are basically indistinguishable from the position of every Democrat now running for president. Abortion, anytime, anywhere, for any reason, for free. And in fact, it's actually worse than this, because the position of every senator currently running for the Democratic nomination, and at least one governor, is that a living, breathing baby who survives an abortion procedure can still be left to die after birth. Let's be clear. These candidates are wildly and spectacularly out of the mainstream in American life. Gallup polling over the last 2 decades has consistently shown that a majority of Americans is opposed to unrestricted abortion access beyond the first trimester. The Gallup numbers actually show that well under 1/3 of Americans support abortion beyond the first 3 months. And a new NBC PBS Marist poll finds that fully 4 out of 5 Americans are opposed to all abortion in the 3rd trimester, and that includes a majority of self-identifying pro-choice voters. I want to say that again. A majority of self-identifying pro-choice voters in America is opposed to abortion in the 3rd trimester. So the polling of Americans is actually quite different than what the Democrats are going to pretend over the next 2 days when they talk into their echo chamber. As Democrats' abortion positions have become more extreme, they have no longer sought to even persuade fellow citizens with whom they disagree. Rather, they've become openly hostile to Americans who disagree on this great moral challenge. My colleague from New York, for instance, Senator Gillibrand, who will be attending this weekend's forum in South Carolina, made her feelings clear earlier this month in an interview with the Des Moines Register. In promising that she would only appoint judges who would uphold Roe v. Wade, here's what she said. Listen to this quote. "I think there are some issues that have such moral clarity that we as a society have decided that the other side is not acceptable. Imagine saying that it's okay to appoint a judge who's racist or anti-Semitic or homophobic. This is not an issue where there is a fair other side. There is no moral equivalency when it comes to racism, and I do not believe there is a moral equivalency when it comes to changing laws that deny women reproductive freedom," close quote. What? What are we talking about here? Are you kidding me? Did you catch what she just said? According to a sitting United States senator and a candidate for the Democratic nomination to be President of the United States, holding pro-life views in America is no longer acceptable. It is not a fair position, she tells us. It is the moral equivalent of racism or anti-Semitism. Perhaps in the senator's next interview, she'll suggest that pro-life Americans belong in a basket of deplorables. There is so much wrong with this statement that it's difficult to know where to begin. We could note the plain, simple fact that it is not pro-lifers who have an ugly link to racism. Rather, since the very beginning, the American abortion industry has been intimately connected to eugenics. This is the origins of the movement. As Planned Parenthood founder Margaret Sanger put it herself, quote, think about this quote, "The unbalance between the birth rate of the unfit and the fit is the greatest present menace to civilization," close quote. Sanger's racial opinions are a matter of some dispute, but this part is clear. She intentionally targeted efforts at black neighborhoods in Harlem and in the Deep South, and many of the people involved in her efforts took things a step further, going so far as to forcibly sterilize African American women that they deemed to be unfit to procreate. We could also note that it's in part because of this ugly history that today black women in America are 3.5 times more likely to have an abortion than white women. And in some parts of Senator Gillibrand's home state, black children are actually more likely to be aborted than to be carried to term. Or we could point to the continued eugenic use of abortion, for example, to kill children who have non-life-threatening diseases. In the United States today, 2/3 of all babies in the womb who are found to have Down syndrome are aborted. 2/3 of all babies found to have Down syndrome in the US are now aborted, and in some parts of Europe, the rate is pushing 100%, and there are public ad campaigns in 2 nations in Europe to celebrate the fact that they've gotten rid of all of their Down syndrome babies. Our founders knew that hard political issues should not be resolved at gunpoint. They should be resolved by debate, which starts by assuming the dignity of your counterparty in that debate. We're watching that conviction go by the wayside right now. Slandering pro-life Americans as, in effect, Klans members and Nazis is just a way to crush debate, not to persuade. It's a way of saying that these people are so morally repugnant that they don't deserve a voice, they don't deserve to be treated like human beings, they don't deserve to be engaged in debate, they're not people that you could possibly have a reasonable conversation with. This is crazy talk. It's not difficult to imagine where this approach leads. When we lose sight of the intrinsic and inexhaustible dignity of unborn children, we open the door to abortion's violence. And when we lose sight of the dignity of our fellow citizens in debate, we open the door to yet other kinds of violence. The dehumanization of our friends and neighbors, whether they're in the opposite party or in the womb, destroys our national life together and our national conversation. We need, on both sides, to be constantly stitching back together that fabric that's been torn asunder. I'd suggest to the Democrats that are heading to the South Carolina debate this weekend that they should spend less time wrestling with each other to say more ridiculously extreme clickbait things for our high-propensity primary voters, and they spend more time listening to the voices of their pro-life fellow citizens. My guess is they'll learn something, and our national debate will be the better for it. Thank you, Mr. President.